Yes, because of the high stakes. Sometimes it's not about the need for governance, but also the greed for money and power. So when that sets in, then you know definitely the dynamics change. Maybe where we have a clear line of inheritance, like in Uganda, it becomes maybe easier. But of course, even in Uganda, we've had issues.
Even in Uganda, you can contest it, though there are much clear demarcations of how it
exactly.
happens.
So I think this issue, this whole issue of the chiefdomship and the kingdomship needs to be looked into. Otherwise, if we leave it, continue this way, we may run into bigger problems in this country.
I think for me, really, the big picture is about society and how it metamorphosizes over a time. We have got our African traditional society having been subjected to a lot of foreign interventions, and majority of them having been brutal, that they impacted negatively on our original natural setting. It is therefore not rocket science for one to analyze that having been impacted on in a manner in which our societies have been impacted on, including our chiefdoms, kingdoms, and the rest, you are bound now, due to the spillovers of globalization, to experience the kind of grab and take, pulls and pushes, the way we are experiencing them, even in our settings. Because you see, even before, by the way, these rivalries were there within the chiefdoms and the kingdoms. Now, how much after this negative impact, like historically we know it, of the altercations do you think we would be having? Do you think any less?
Rachel, so something, you know, Mututa insists Sobukuka is here, and of course nobody says he's Nobukuka, and I think you also insist, what's the kingdom called? Owaikumbania.
Yes.
I think Owaikumbania is also here, even without the Ikumbania. The one was there, my very good friend, the late now, Bishop Chrysostom Wayavide, was also contested, I think by Mubala, and there was another faction of the Mubala, exactly.
Actually, one time I told him, you Bishop, you are going to manage this institution, will you be able? But somehow,
yeah, he navigated through and through, and so that's where we are, waiting to see what happens. Say something about that also, because I know you are an interested party, just like Mututa is one.
Apparently, yes.
Well, it's unfortunate that it's come to this. There are people who no longer have the cultural interest in mind. Like Bwana Mututa just pointed out, it now boils down to money and power. Just raw altercations. I mean, there's nobody who's talking about the good of the culture and the traditions and the norms and the practices. That is the thing of the past. It's very much about self-interest. It's very much about propagating one's personal interests, which is quite unfortunate, because that is not what the NRM government envisaged when this whole thing was rolled out.
In 93.
Yes. This is not what was expected. But here we are in an unfortunate situation.
Okay, just before we get into our conversation today, the teachers, of course, the teachers' strike. It has also become an issue in Kampala, in Uganda, of course, not in Kampala, but in Uganda. We see it, and we don't seem to see this puzzle solved. At least it started, it's been here, we've lived with it, and we just expect that maybe whichever leadership comes into UNATU and maybe all those other formations will still face the same issue. What needs to be done, and what can the government do once and for all to see that we climax and end this?
I think it now comes to a level where it's a question of equity, a question of justice. You really cannot fault these teachers very much. This question has been on the table for 10 solid years. That's a long time. Back in 2012, the government began to work towards actually enhancing the salaries of science teachers. At that time, they added something to their salaries, and they've been working towards actually delivering a powerful package. But in all fairness, if 3/4 of the teachers in secondary schools are arts teachers, how do you expect that this small fraction, a quarter really, We'll be the only ones to benefit, and then the rest are satisfied with this arrangement. In these 10 years, I think that should have been taken care of by now, because these voices have been clamoring for a better arrangement for years on end. And I think worse still, even the promises that were made initially have largely not been honored. One of the crises is that there is no honest broker in this discussion. Unfortunately, the people you have to deal with have broken agreements repeatedly over the years. And there is no pretense that this should be an equitable arrangement. Okay, the government says there is no money to give everyone a healthy package. Granted. But why is it that of the money that is available now, someone has not thought to at least maybe not fly from, because science teachers, graduate science teachers at this time, receive about 1.2 million shillings. And their arts counterparts receive 1,080,000, thereabout. Grade 5 teachers, sciences, receive about 950,000 shillings. Their counterparts in the arts receive 795,000. So the disparity at this time is not marked. But to go from 1.2 to 4 million, while the others stagnates at 1.80,000, and then to go from 950 to 3 million, while your counterpart stagnates at 795, is unconscionable. It really is.
Okay.
At least, you know, the scientist teachers are not saying they should be paid exactly the same amount of money, but they're saying it should be more fair, more just. For example, what UNATU has been saying, they have a collective bargaining agreement which dates back to 2018. In that proposal, they were saying that science teachers ought to get about their side of things, 6 million, and they were looking at about 5.4 for their arts counterparts. The disparity is not so great. I think 6 million is a stretch, given our economy. But I'm thinking something that could be done right away is to lower the planned payout for science teachers in the interest of giving something to these other counterparts. They're saying primary teachers ought to appreciate from 500,000 to 1.35. That is a UNATU proposal. But even if you're not going to lift this person to 1.35, can they get 900? They're saying that head teachers, UNATU again, should be in the bracket of about 10 million. Well, maybe not 10 million. Can they get maybe 3.5? There are things that can be done that to cure this paralysis is really what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Why the extreme position?
Okay, well, thank you very much. Ndugu Rugarama, I wanted to say something about that. In September last year, 2021, a cabinet proposed and passed one of their own resolutions in cabinet, and it was to see how to put in place and implement what they call the National Salaries Board. Now, that was in 2021. And the idea was to see how to harmonize and do all the things. Now, this is a proposal, a yesteryear proposal, but it's not been here for 1 year. But of course, we've talked about all these things, salaries. There are lots of disparities, like you're saying, in all the things. That's why when you talk about the mergers now of the rationalization of government MDAs, you find a lot of resistance and a lot of challenges, because looking at a corporation like UBC, for example, UBC, UCC, NITA, UICT, I think Media Center, Media Council, and all these others, all under the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. But you'll notice that the CEOs, the EDs, the MDs in these different corporations, even and differently, they get different opportunities and stuff like that. So these disparities, when the teachers make noise, I think it's because they've come out to make noise, but I'm sure there could be other quarters there that also seem not to be happy with what is happening.
Dear comrades, I have interested myself in the teachers' affair, like I have interested myself previously in all the labor actions that have been taken by other groups, including the health workers, the judicial officers, among others. Talking about, and even if I come to the teachers, generally speaking, I find it very disturbing that we seem not to have come to terms with the fact that we need to harmonize salaries across the board. The disparity is such that you ask yourself as to whether really we have got a system that is very functional. You cannot imagine a situation whereby people who are almost the same qualification, doing almost the same job, they may not necessarily be in the same ministry or body. They have got a difference in between them of more than even 3, sometimes 5, sometimes 1 million disparity. And you ask yourself as to whether these same people go to the same market, take their children to the same schools, same health centers or private health centers. So in that respect, therefore, the general picture of salary disparity is really very disturbing, and I would call upon the powers that be that this is a matter they need to harmonize as early as yesterday. That is one. Two, we have consistently as a country had different groups of labor force, our labor force here, workers, contest what they get as payment and also the conditions of work, be it those who work for government, even those who are in the private sector, our so-called investors. But that is a bigger debate. The point I want to pick out there is that for a very long time, and I think Rachel talked about it for the case of the teachers, the last 10 years, and I think it even goes back a little, not just 10 years, but particularly maybe the 10 years is this issue which we are facing. But even before the 10 years, we have had the teachers talk about the enhancement. And yes, granted, because there has been a gradual enhancement, they are not getting what they used to get some time back. I think about 3 to 4 levels at which the salary has been increased. Now, the point at which we are having this discussion is that, one, when you listen to Filbert, the Secretary General
Baguma
of UNATO, you realize that they have never called off the strike. No, they simply suspended the strike. That industrial action that we are talking about of the teachers is not something that was given up. They agreed with the government that in the meantime, as we are looking for grid, we are temporarily suspending the industrial action. Now, time came, and I wonder, you see, sometimes when we talk from media platforms of this nature, then there are these who claim to be more movement than others and that kind of stuff, which is also a very big problem. But you see, and that affects negatively the quality of debate, because you hold back. You don't want to say the truth simply because you are going to be looked at as somebody maybe who is a sellout or somebody who is beginning to develop cold feet. No, I want to state that the cause of the teachers is a genuine cause. The strike we are talking about, the industrial action, if you like, is constitutionally provided, and I don't think, at least as far as I have cross-checked, I don't think they are doing something illegal. I also want to state that it is not proper for the authorities to be intimidating the teachers. And by intimidating is, I mean, when you look at all these correspondences which are flying around, I think time is best utilized if the leadership of the teachers is brought on board in terms of a conversation. We we had, because you see, it is very unfortunate to look at a man like Baguma, and you think he's the one who is probably causing all this trouble, because Baguma is simply getting feelers from the structures. And maybe also to put it in perspective, is that who are these teachers that Baguma and his other panel of executive leadership rights they are agitating for? We are talking about first and foremost teachers in primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions who are members, because not everybody is a member, who are public. This is where I'm talking about public institutions. Because people would be saying, but my children are in Chitebi and they are studying. If Chitebi is a private school, then those are not members. And there was an attempt to bring them on board, but of course, as usual, in the African context, there will always be suspicions. So these government institutions, primary, secondary, are not everybody there, by the way, is a member of UNATO, but at least a good number of them, and the impact has been felt. So I was on the issue of the threats. I don't think it is wise at this material time to brand the teachers who have resumed the industrial action as traitors, because yes, it is against the heels of the children having been at home for a solid 2 years. It is also against the heels of the known fact that the parents have been laboring with these children, and they hoped that this time around the children are going to concentrate at school. Granted. But you see, when can we say, Baguma and group, you should have resumed your industry action, if not now?
Okay.
That's another thing. Let me just conclude this by saying, therefore, that the issue of the industry action by teachers is something that can best be handled by toning down on some of the communications that we make, be it in writing, be it on media like this, because I do believe that the government has good intentions, if they mean to, towards all the workforce. To me, and maybe this should be the very final, to me, the argument actually is not about the salary enhancement. The argument is even not about that the science teachers are actually going to be given the 4 million. The argument is what is being foreseen in giving the science teachers the 4 million. Is it meant to persuade our population to join sciences? Then, therefore, if that is the case, who planned it that way? Because if the teachers themselves were not part and parcel of this, who came up with the 4 million shillings? Which panel is that?
That decided.
Exactly. Why, therefore, should now the teachers be... Because at the end of the day, is there somebody out there bent on dividing the teachers? Maybe. Was UNATO becoming a force that it was disturbing the establishment and they needed to break, to divide it into two?
Because it's now being broken.
Yes, because at the end of the day, and this divide and rule is also not good leadership. Whoever is doing it...
Their union song says, for the union makes us strong, but now the union is dismembering. The strength of the union is that...
Then I would want to make a final recommendation that to me, if this money had come in form of projects and that the science teachers undertake, you bring it as an allowance. Because remember, the teachers had already agreed, since the science teachers were getting 30% over and above the general salary, there was no problem. But we are talking about 300% increment.
What Rich
was talking about, which is a fact, and that is very unacceptable, even from an elementary point of view. What therefore should be done is that it is not late. And I have seen the president do a rethink. By the way, doing a rethink is not a sign of weakness. No. People think, I say there's this thing of think twice. You pull back and you are like, okay, fine. we are going to have a salary enhancement, but what about the science teachers in certain schools where there are even no science infrastructure?
Okay.
What are they going to benefit
Okay.
those teachers and the students?
Ndugu Mtuta, in 2019 October, was we were celebrating the World Teachers Day, the Ugandan version here, government launched the National Teacher Policy. A very good policy, and of course amongst the things that they address in that policy is a professionalization of the teaching profession itself in this country. Talking about remunerations, of course now that's where the salaries come in, and the return on investment, of course all those things. Uplifting the standards of teaching, getting into one of the things in there is bringing on board an institution, UNITE, which is the equivalent of maybe the LDC for those who come from law schools. But of course the salary bit of it was one of the things to talk about. Now, as the policy is being implemented, because the policy started being implemented in 2019, 2020 you were into COVID, but the policy is actually moving. And unfortunately about the policy is it has combined ideas of private school teachers and government school teachers. So it brings all together the CUPSTA, UNATU, etc. None of them castigates the policy. And of course that's where these things are. During COVID, you remember, in one of the president's addresses, there was a 20 billion offer that was given still to the teachers to see how to actually help them go through the hard times of COVID. And that money also must have caused a lot of problems, because I even do not know until today whether they actually shared the money, got the money. There was something called the 20 billion teacher circle, etc., etc. The other allegation, not the allegation, I think the other issue is that I also hear about is we have more arts teachers than the science teachers. And by far, I think the ratio of the science and arts teachers, I think 70-30.
Huh? Arts, three quarters.
Arts teachers are even more in there, and of course finally on what Ndugu Rugaraba talks about here, which I also talked about, the issue of divide and rule, that you naturally actually become a vanguard force, or somehow a good force for bargaining, a very good voice. Now it's dismembering, it's waning, and lots of those are things. Let me hear your thoughts before we get into our Pan-African Friday conversation.
Of course, trade unions world over are a force against an establishment. They can be a very big force. And I'm sure that the government of Uganda is not intended to disorganize or disunite the teachers. But there's also the issues that you people have talked about, issues of sobriety, issues of consistency, and issues of fairness. I see that playing out in that case, because teachers are teachers anyway. You have teachers who are teaching arts, you have teachers who are teaching sciences, but it even gets more complicated when it comes to a headmaster who is heading a school of both arts and science teachers, and more so if unfortunately that headmaster happens to be an arts teacher. Exactly. So that one, then you will have to find this teacher who is earning 5 million, and maybe the headmaster is earning far less than that. Then you have to tell him to many things definitely will happen. But for me, it is not even the issue of whether the teachers are being paid or science teachers are being paid or not, but also need to look at the whole scenario of when you are paying these teachers, what do you want them to do? They are going to teach your children, but what about the children, the environment under which they are learning? How does that reflect in the performances and the welfare of the students too? But at the end of it all, I think there's a lot of discrepancies in salaries, especially when it comes to several units of government. And like it was recommended, the only way to end this is to have a review of all the salaries. I mean, the other time Parliament members were increasing their salaries. So if that be the case, then let every department be given the leeway to increase their salaries. Now, if that's not going to be possible, then let's have someone who will say, no, you take this, you take this, you take this, so that we have this harmonization. And as it were agreed, let's have a commission specifically looking into salaries of civil servants of this country. Now, without that, it is going to be... Exactly. Because you, like the other time, we were told that in some departments, you find a driver who is earning 2 million, and you can find someone in senior management does not even earn that much. Then how, if it comes to the transfer of that driver from one department to the other, what happens? Will he go with his salary, which is earning more than the person is driving? Or, I mean, it's a lot of debate there. But for me, I still believe that with the establishment of a commission that will be able to look into the salaries of the civil servants and public servants in this country, it is going to help us, I think, end all of this hullabaloo, and maybe people will be stable. And because you wonder, when these people are getting far less than what they're earning today, there was no problem, and they were performing very well. So you'd expect that with this increment, people will even work harder, but that has been not the case.
Question is, what is our problem? Ndugu Jagenda, what is our problem in our education system as far as sciences are concerned? Do we have enough laboratories in schools? If we do not have the laboratories in every school, have we at least made regions to say, okay, in Wokedia, we have got established schools, about 8 of them. We make every week 2 days in a week, whereby we take all the children from these other schools which don't have laboratories, and we carry out our experiments from there. Have we managed that? Do we have enough reagents? What are you giving 4 million shillings to a science teacher to do, to regurgitate about? Is that what we are doing?
That's what the historian
Where is the research component? Where are we putting our emphasis?
What new thing is in there?
That is the argument we are having. We are saying, therefore, we are misdirecting ourselves. The point that the president is talking about is very good. We support. Let salaries be enhanced. The problem is we enhance with what in mind? Because you see now, you are already creating a paralysis. Administratively, there is a paralysis. In terms of between the teachers themselves who get the same training, teach the same students, use the same text, apparatus, you are creating a paralysis. How do you expect to get results in an environment that is highly polarized?
But even teachers aside, if you antagonize the DEO, you antagonize the inspector of schools, you antagonize the head teachers, because this person is earning more than all of them.
It's a crisis.
What is this?
We can stop this, and comrades are listening to us. You see, we have got. That's why I was asking myself, who came up with this? Who came up with the 4 million shillings? You see, the stakeholders are there. I have carefully listened to religious leaders. I have carefully listened to community leaders, the teachers themselves. Believe me, somebody was saying this is a question of Nugu. Nugu is a Ruganda word. I don't know if it's a Ruganda word.
Anyway.
He said that, you see the problem. Now the arts teachers are looking at the science teachers as, no, this is not the issue of Nugu. Because when you listen to them, it is very clear. The point here is make a systematic plan, involve all the stakeholders. You will not hear this kind of what they call noise, in my opinion, which is genuine concern comments. Have the people meant to benefit from these plans part of the planning, and you will see the system going on smoothly without, I can assure you, if we become intransigent and carry on with this enhancement as it is, and probably even fire the teachers as they say, we are going to create a very big problem. I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but this will be a precursor so many other negative things. I hope my government, and I trust it, still has some good, clear-headed men and women will not go further. They will do everything and do the correct thing.
Yeah, but for me, the interest, like we discussed last time, is that Uganda for some time has been a convergence of education, especially tourism, we say so. We're having people from Congo, we're having people from Burundi, people
Tanzania,
from Tanzania,
Rwanda,
Somalia,
yeah,
all over.
Somalia,
They're
Ethiopia,
in this
South
country
Sudan.
because of, first of the insurgents, those some of those countries, but also the improving conditions of education in this country. And that, I think, I don't know the figures if we have, but I'm sure there is a lot that is coming in terms of taxes and earning to the government of and the education sector especially. Now, when this happens, it draws us back from the progress. So I think it's important that this issue of education is addressed first, but also conveniently, so that every player, like I said, every stakeholder is comfortable. Because in education we have known stakeholders in this country. Exactly.
And I think along those very lines, I keep wondering, why is it that some things take forever to do and everyone sees what is required? For example, the public service has been telling us for a while now about this whole business of harmonization. What is so hard?
Harmonize.
Well, they said, okay, we'll just phase out some of these things that are doing the same work and, the same questionable reasons for their existence, now that their work is already in the core ministry and they need to go and so. But there's never been any movement.
Exactly.
Why?
Because an engineer in UNRWA does not earn the same as an engineer in the Ministry of Works and Transport.
But like Ndugu here was saying,
yes,
why
they're all engineers qualified
who
from the same
originated such an
university.
idea?
Yes.
No, but the problem,
Why?
Qualified
thing
from
is
the same
that?
universities, have the same qualifications, do the same things, experience the same. They're all under the engineering professional
body.
whatever.
But that's one thing, they're the
professional
same level.
body. But you can't find one and tell them to go to the main ministry department and they actually accept. Nobody would want to move from UNRWA to
Yeah, but
But it's one thing for
Yes.
people of the same qualifications. But who originated these concepts where a driver earns more than a senior officer in the ministry?
And such a man,
originated
such
these
a man
things?
goes out of the boardroom, coming up with such a proposal,
No, who approved
and
it?
then goes back to his home and sleeps soundly. Really?
Or that they propose something for posterity.
Does that happen?
And then it takes
but at
a
the same
lifetime to
time,
change
for
this.
me, I would not even have a problem with that.
No, I would have a
But
problem forever.
Very serious problem.
No, it's not right.
The
That's not
problem
I would have a problem
is
forever.
how do we synergize? How do we feel into the? How do we add up as a country?
Do you
As-
do that
as-
by
as a
breaking
public
the others?
service? So it means that we
Ndugu
are having a
Lututa.
gerrymandering within.
Yes, but you
within-
see, yes, and I think what Rugaraman and Takali talk about is very important, because I will tell you the salaries of these drivers in one department or agency of government
What case is here?
is more than what maybe an undersecretary gets.
No,
in the
even
ministry.
their supervisors in the core ministry.
Or even the supervisors actually in the core ministry.
I mean, who
are you
did
sure
this?
that
In all fairness,
the
who comes up
driver
with
of
this?
the ministry of Kampala earns the same as maybe a driver in KCC, for example? Some of these things are what we need to look into. Are you sure that this person who gets this money in my ministry, ICT and national government, national guidance, earns the same as somebody in one of the agencies under the ministry
In
itself?
NITA. Do you think
in
they earn the
NITA
same?
or in NITA or whatever,
I mean-
you know? And I think that's why it is so.
Uganda Zabu.
Yeah,
Even Kenyans
these are
believe
issues.
us now.
And you know, and of course, that's why I took you back to a proposal by Cabinet. It was actually talked about in Cabinet on the 6th of September last year to find a national salaries board. And these are some of the issues that they pushed to the Ministry of the Public Service. And the question today would be, how far? And where are we? What prompted this discussion, first of all, in Cabinet? How far how far have they gotten with it? What is there now? What are we talking about? And you know, these are things that we need to actually get into, because we know very well that a member of parliament, if you are representing a big constituency like Woman MP for Kampala, and you are Woman MP for maybe Karenga, or Woman MP for another small district in a park, whatever, you are all members of parliament, and I think you earn the same salary. That I think is okay.
Allowance, which
It's the allowances that differ. Chairperson of this commission, for that commission, etc. But as members of parliament, you earn the same. Whether you are a woman member of parliament, Bukedia, Anita Mong, the only difference is you are the speaker of parliament. But as a member of parliament, we don't care about the size of your district. There are members of parliament who come from constituencies that have about 2,000, 3,000 voters, and that's all. Your vote in parliament is just a handful of persons. But of course, those are the people that voted for you. Then you're seated with another member of parliament who came with thousands of voters because the constituency is actually that big. But what we do, you are for Wakiso, the other is for Kampala, and another is for a small district or so. But as members of parliament, you get the same. So, and I think this is the same thing that we need to look at when we are talking about all the other salaries on board. And I think for us to solve this problem, like Ndugu Rugarama here says, we need to know where the problem is and we need to harmonize it. Why would somebody go to college and study as a NATS teacher, and they know that they're not going to be appreciated, and they know that well, to be a NATS teacher in this country is just as good as nothing? Why? Somebody was actually mooting a discussion and said, okay, teach your chemistry in chemistry, teach your chemistry in chemistry, or teach your biology in biology, teach your physics in physics. You still need English, which English is not considered actually as a science subject. Now, somebody taught you the English that you are using to instruct your chemistry, your biology, your physics, your etc. So, these are conversations that you can never get concluded. Let's get to CHOGM. CHOGM 2022 just ended last week on Saturday, hosted by the Republic of Rwanda. President Paul Kagame is now chairman of CHOGM until 2023 when we see it again happen, I think, in Samoa. Is that right, Went? I think in Samoa. That's where it's going. Rwanda joined the fraternity in 2009. 13 years later, they are hosting CHOGM. Out of that CHOGM meeting that was in Kigali a week ago, we also saw new entrants come onto board now, bringing the number to 56. Gabon and I think Togo. Now, these are still formally not one of those countries that were under the British rule. They're also coming to the fraternity. Of course, Rwanda became the 6th African country to host after Zambia, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, South Africa, and Uganda. In the last about 43, 44 years, we had 5 countries, 5 African countries, of course, hosting. 3 countries from Southern Africa, 1, of course, from West Africa, Uganda from East Africa, now the 2nd country from East Africa, Rwanda, they're hosting. Let's get to the genesis of CHOGM, its historical progress, and what we think is in this thing. Do we take any pride that Rwanda in the neighborhood here hosted? If you look at the 7 member states of the EAC, 12 had an opportunity to host CHOGM, but is Kenya also desiring the same? Tanzania, Congo that just came in recently, South Sudan, Burundi, and all the others. Rachel, let me start with you.
I was actually thinking about where the Commonwealth finds itself today. Like many organizations, after many years, the Commonwealth, the concept, is a shadow of what it should be. It is no longer capable of achieving the ideals. I think it has come full circle. It's just a bit like where OAU found itself before deciding to become the AU. Maybe they'll change a name or two. But I was thinking at the fact that looking at the Commonwealth, the present arrangement, I think its basis is as far back as 1931, which brings it to about 90 years. But the present head of the Commonwealth has been at the helm 70 years. When she assumed the throne, she also became the head of the Commonwealth. 70 years and counting. I was also thinking that the person who was designated as heir apparent, even if the role is not inheritable or inherited, is her son, Prince Charles. And Prince Charles was 3 years old when Mama first took the reins of power. I think just on that basis alone, the Commonwealth has been stuck for many, many years. You see, when there is no new energy, mental, psychological, and so on and so forth, there's a tendency to sort of be stuck in the groove of status quo. Unfortunately, that's where the Commonwealth is. If you look at where the founding principles and related documents that go with the founding of this organization, it talked very much about putting at the forefront democracy and the issues of governance. Human rights, of course. The fact that Rwanda would be the host of CHOGM at this time, despite all the shouting and carrying on, is a true picture of where the Commonwealth is. Remember that among other people who have been looking very closely at this arrangement, among them is the United Nations Human Rights Initiative, there's Human Rights Watch, there's Freedom House, and others. They've been saying, and I'm very careful to say, they've been alleging for years and years that Rwanda, among many other African countries, has not honored those principles, the principles of democracy and human rights and so on. And then, of course, the latest incident is where the UK decided to export its problems in the form of unwanted immigrants into Rwanda as a holding center. And why? Because everybody hates the idea of being exported from Europe to Rwanda, because they say there is no chance of the life they aspired to. You asked me, what does that say in terms of where the Commonwealth is? It is not doing well. It has abandoned the roots of what it should represent at this time. So much so that the Commonwealth is not in a position to hold its members accountable for excesses of any kind. There was a time when they had more credibility. At that time, they threw out people like Fiji when they violated democratic principles. Zimbabwe was a culprit at one point. Nigeria was also a victim at another, Pakistan, and so on and so forth. But they have sunk into a level where many of its members are anything but credible. And yet they no longer have the moral authority to tell them otherwise. How are you going to tell me that I need to change my president when yours has been there for 70? If you know what I mean. In other words, when we began this thing before even the colonial era came to an end, there was a pretense that the founders of this organization, and of course we're talking about the British, there was a pretense that they really had the high ground when it came to democracy. We now know it's not true. We now know that if at this time in the history of the world, a so-called democratic government can export people to where they don't want to be, you cannot tell me I cannot also imprison others for as long as I want. In other words, the Commonwealth, I said before, has come full circle. No longer in a position to effect meaningful change. Not for themselves, and certainly not for us.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Rachel Takali, for that. Now, Ndugu Rugarama, we talk about the Commonwealth here, and of course I think Rachel has given her a very good opinion onto that. Rwanda became the 54th country to join the Commonwealth. They're now at 56 because 2 other countries have come on. But when you look at what happens there is, for example, Pan-Africanism. We have 19, I think, about 17, 18 or 19 African countries under the Commonwealth that we talk about.
19. 19.
There are 19. There are 19 African countries, of course, plus the 2 monarchies there, the Eswatini and Lesotho. But for all the time that we've been there, and I think the first African country to get there through some agreement, I think it was Westminster something agreement, was South Africa in 1931, like you says. But you notice that for all these years with the Commonwealth, and of course with 19 members, the only time that Africa has had to have a Secretary General there, we now have Patricia Scotland, who is the Secretary General. The only time that we had an opportunity as Africa was 1990-2000 for the 10 years there, when we had Chief Emeka from Nigeria. And of course, we've had Emeka, just one Secretary General. We've had a 6th country, of course, come to also organize and do all the things. Let's talk about CHOGM itself, its spillovers, its maybe the accidental benefits, and a very good question, a very big question that comes from a majority of the people is what commonwealth do we have in common? Even what wealth is this that is actually common to all of us when the entire Africa has a smaller GDP that is smaller than just one UK?
Employing the Pan-African lenses to diagnose this CHOGM issue, I would say that CHOGM, Commonwealth Heads of States and Government meeting, is nothing but a rebrand, a renaming of the quote-unquote British Empire when they were at their helm as the colonial master. All the countries that were colonized by Britain, when it was the empire that it was, later and gained independence. That's another debate about independence of those that were colonized by Britain. Britain didn't want to let go, and indeed it has not let go. So what they had to do was to create something that sounded very acceptable, at least in the ears of those unsuspecting listeners. I don't want to use words like naive, no, unsuspecting people. That it was just every 2 years they would be meeting all those, you can imagine that kind of history, that there is so much love for all those countries that were colonized by the English, and now that you have gained independence, it would be good manners for you to meet your colonizer every after 2 years. And now you can see that it has expanded to countries like Rwanda, which were never a colony of the English, that you can also apply for special status, and then you can not just become a member, but you will also host. Even when, like my sister here correctly observed, the same people with their media and other agencies, International Human Rights Watch and their cousins, have consistently condemned the regime in Kigali, that they do not meet the basic standards of a democracy and human rights, but they do not only become a member of the Commonwealth, but they also host CHOGM. Now, you certainly can see the double standards, and at the same time, the lack of honesty. Now, honesty in this case is in line with what are your values, what do you stand for? And I think a BBC journalist tried to bring it up when she was asking the president of Rwanda. The values, according to the CHOGM or Commonwealth, are things to do with human rights, things to do with democracy. But question is Britain herself respecting the human rights and the democracy that we are talking about? Let's start from there, even before we go to these other countries that are members, I don't know if by choice, of the Commonwealth. My take is that no, we have seen Britain aggressively go into other countries and take the governments down by use of force. We have seen them join with international intelligence agencies like CIA, M6, Mossad, M6 should be that one of Britain, anyway, it is theirs. And they have clandestinely gone into countries, carried out subterranean activities through intelligence, and slowly but surely sabotaged the economic, socio-political policies of that particular country until they bring the regime down. So they do not, in my opinion, and I said wearing the Pan-African lenses, I do not want to save anybody here. I want to tell the truth that I do not find Britain such a good example that when they come up and say under the Commonwealth, we are for human rights, we are for decent leadership, we are for democracy. I do not think they have those values to start with, that they should be exporting them to their former colonies and those which other countries which are joining. So we start from a false start. And you know what happens when there is a false start, usually you have got to repeat the exercise, you start afresh, but we seem to have started from a false start, and yet we are continuing with the marathon. And that tells you where we are bound to stop when, that is if we ever stop anyway, as far as this marathon is concerned. I want also to state that for me, we do not, in the Pan-African movement, we don't believe in agonizing. We organize.
We organize.
We admit that this whole thing called Commonwealth is a misnomer. But you see, it is there. So what do we do? It is there, it is a structure. How do we benefit from this structure, which commands now well overcoming to 60 member states? We are saying that if, for instance, on the African continent, we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, what is in there that when we have a meeting like CHOGM, in different subcommittees, in different youth, women, trade and what have you, how do we bring what we intend to achieve through Africa Free Continental Trade Area into the debate in the CHOGM, such that we drive the agenda, the African agenda, through the already established structures. It is very disturbing to note that there hasn't been much, if anything, by the way, that the CHOGM in Kigali has, and I wonder why, because Kagame, President Paul Kagame, has been at the forefront of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and I wonder why there has almost been nothing. Because I was listening to my sister, the head of CETAN, and which is an African trade negotiating bloc. There hasn't been any serious component of Africa Continental Free Trade Area embedded in the CHOGM in Kigali. So what does that tell you? That we seem not, therefore, to have taken what is contained and what is supposed to be achieved in the African Union Agenda 2063. How have those, for instance, aspirations been contained and discussed under CHOGM in Kigali? My thinking is, therefore, that whereas we may get some of these small direct benefits, like money comes in to do roads, maybe in the city, beautify, have increased presence of rooms. I have had that argument in hotels and what have you. They are more long-lasting, critical infrastructure developments that and business plans that can be charted during CHOGM, because CHOGM does not end with the end of the conference. The secretariat remains within the country. They are breaking down the discussions of different subcommittees until the next CHOGM.
Okay.
The problem is that when you don't get the first share proper, then you are bound also not to get the final result proper. So I want to say, as a way of concluding, that we must, it is only the prepared that benefits from the from an activity. Because if something happens like CHOGM and you are not prepared, even the spillovers, the accidental gains are not going to be realized. But most importantly, in line with our motto, organize rather than agonize. It is high time to take opportunity of every available structure, including CHOGM, to drive home the African agenda.
Thank you very much. We'll just take a very short break. Thank you so much, Ndugu Daniel Rugarama from the Pan-African Movement. We'll just take a short break, and when we return, we continue the conversation. And remember, we talk about CHOGM 2022 that just ended last week on a Saturday, hosted by the sixth African country, Rwanda, that has been into the fraternity for only 13 years. They applied, entered in 2009 as a 54th country, and now, of course, had an opportunity to host CHOGM, which ought to have happened last year, I think in 2019 or thereabout, but because of 2020, but I think because of CHOGM, it was pushed to this year. Okay, we just look at it, and of course when we return, we want to look at it still from the Pan-African angle to see what that means. Africa as a continent has got 54 countries. CHOGM now, as a fraternity, as an organization or as an association, has now had 56 members. Of those, we talk about 21 now when you talk about the two that have come in, Togo and Gabon, which is still less than 40%. How do we leverage on that as African countries under that big fraternity of the Commonwealth to propel the African agenda? We'll take a break and return shortly.
It's Freaky Friday from Airtel. Buy or gift. Buy or give.
Get freaky too! Dial *149*10# to load a Freaky Friday bundle for you to enjoy the best offers on voice and data.
To buy a bundle for friends and family, dial *149*10*5#. Freaky Friday with Airtel. Buy or gift a bundle today. Dial *149*10# to get started. Airtel, the smartphone network. We bring you a fresh, well-researched program to help you identify opportunities for investment, job creation, growing your entrepreneurial skills, wealth creation, and social transformation. Create wealth, transform livelihoods. Every week, we showcase opportunities for creating new products and services. Excellence in innovation, the passion and drive to succeed, and the right mindset to grow your business. Create wealth, transform livelihoods. Brought to you by Operation Wealth Creation.
Fun is our flavor. When we're together, the vibe is pretty alright. Our taste is pretty awesome. We are Uganda's #1 fruity refreshment. Enjoy Mirinda Fruity, Uganda's #1 fruity refreshment.
Success.
What the book packages, great entertainment,
Sports, the local content, telenovela, the movies.
there is something for everybody.
Everybody,
Go TV, this is where great stories live.
Get the best entertainment for any budget. With GoTV, you will have great entertainment for as little as 13,000 Ugandan shillings per month. GoTV, great stories, Zidiwano. GoTV Uganda, love it.
Oh, Susan, I want to propose to Rose. Yes, and this time I am serious.
Have you guys had sex?
Duh, of course.
And have you had sex without using condoms?
Hey, nga you're curious.
I'm more concerned. Are you having sex with other people?
Hey, hello, is this an interview or what?
No, just things you should think about. Do you know Rose's HIV status?
Okay, this is serious. Should I be worried?
It is actually serious. Do you know your HIV status?
I think I am safe. Many times we get into situations that put us at risk of HIV. However, the first step to ending HIV is getting tested and knowing your results.
It's Time Up HIV. Call 0800-211-046 or text 8080 toll-free for more information about how to prevent HIV.
This message is brought to you by Ministry of Health with support from USAID.
Well, thank you so much and welcome back from the break. My name is Jagen Asemakola Ziksok. Another very good and lovely morning, the 1st of July in this year 2022. Now, greetings to teacher Tom Chiwanuka in Webaja. Cause he's actually now watching the program. He's a teacher, and you know, we started with teachers' issues, and of course, he's also no, he's a NATS teacher. He's a NATS teacher. Teacher Tom Chiwanuka is a NATS teacher, and he's also a very good Pan-Africanist. So I think we are now in his heart directly. We talked about the teachers' issues, and we now talk about Pan-Africanism, the things that he lives and does on a daily. Ndugu Mtuta, I've just given the statistics here of the countries in Commonwealth, which we now shorten to CHOGM, but of course there are quite a number of things now. Commonwealth just heads of government meeting, but there are other things, the Commonwealth Games, Commonwealth that, where we still participate. Now, looking at, of course, the epitome of it is this Commonwealth heads of government meeting. Less than 40%, well, to be exact, 38 members of the African Union are members of the Commonwealth. Anything to leverage on that? Looking at the Africa Agenda that was launched in 2013, Africa Agenda 2063, Ndugu Rugaramahia says, every little opportunity as Pan-Africans to want to organize and not organize, let's leverage and take every small opportunity that we have to sell the African Agenda. Can we manage? Shall we? Can we get anywhere? And platforms like CHOGM, do they help us to market and sell our African agenda? Karibu.
Asante. And for me, you know, one thing I don't normally do, and which I don't believe, is to blame anyone for failures, for my failures. And for the failures of Africa, we normally look at it from the upfront line, which is true, but sometimes it also shows the type of community we are. We, in the Commonwealth, we are now coming to about 50 556 countries. And all these countries, I think, is one of the biggest gathering of states outside the UN. But when you look at this, we African countries are the biggest number in that, I think, because I think with Africa we're now coming to about 20-something. Asia has about 16 or so, and then a few other countries. But what do we expect from the Commonwealth, like going to another grouping? Well, one would say we were more or less forced being in that grouping, but even then, that's not a problem. We must be in this knowing what we want to achieve. If we had CHOGM in Rwanda, for example, how prepared was Rwanda, and what did Rwanda benefit from this gathering? We had it in 2007. What did we benefit? And so it is not that the Commonwealth should do, I mean, the CHOGM should provide A, B, C, D. But, well, they could, because I saw, like in Malta, they put up a very good hospital for, I think, children's hospital, and also the number of roads I saw there. Of course, Malta is such a small island. You are able to do all these things. We also have some smaller countries, including Rwanda anyway. But the point here is that sometimes it is us, ourselves. What is our bargaining chip when we go to these conferences, when we go in this CHOGM, when we sit in these air-conditioned and fan-filled rooms? I've seen this happen in Australia, wherever CHOGM has been. Now, and the other thing is, when you look at the program, you realize there's the meeting. I think the biggest meeting there is the meeting for ministers of foreign affairs within the Commonwealth, because for them they have a number of a big time to discuss issues. But for heads of state, the program is drawn. Come there, endorse the next venue, look at this, and the head of the Commonwealth will speak, and things end there. You may not have much to do there. But that notwithstanding, still we as African, we can have our agenda set, even outside those boardrooms. Say, next year when we go to the islands where we're going to have CHOGM, what is our plan? What do we intend to achieve? In other words, we should sit back and say, this is what we need, this is what we need. This. We can even use the forum or the African Union. Say, as for African Union, what do we want to achieve under? Because I think most of the states are there anyway. What do we intend to achieve under the Commonwealth? And we can do that. But if we are going to sit until someone has to decide for us, I think that is not what we need to do as Africans. Because Africans, we are known to be aggressive. We should not only be aggressive in playing football and other games. Let's also look at things that concern us and things that are really of value to us. Because when you look at the Commonwealth, of course, like names have changed from the time of the 60s up to when it came to 70s. But I think for Uganda also need to reflect on this fact that the first Commonwealth, I think the first CHOGM for that title was in the one of 1971.
In Africa?
Yeah, for
Singapore.
The
Singapore
one.
Yes,
Oh,
the Singapore one.
Commonwealth,
Yes.
yeah, as it is.
And that was the first one. Now that first CHOGM, the head of the Commonwealth did not attend. The Queen of England did not attend that in Singapore. For the simple reason, and which is also very crucial for Africa, was that Britain was supplying arms to South Africa. And many people had wanted to use that forum to criticize the Britain for supplying arms to South Africa when South Africa actually was embargoed from getting arms which they were using to kill blacks anyway. But the Prime Minister of England had worked a deal with the apartheid government in South Africa, and they were supplying them guns, which ended up killing the black people. So many people, including the president of Uganda, actually, part of the problem he had with the prime minister was specifically on that one. Because the African countries were pushing for a total embargo on arms supply to the Boers in South Africa. Now, the Queen was told that should you go to that meeting, it's going to be not in good taste for you. So they were protecting the Queen. But when you look at that also, you realize that when it became controversial, actually the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Amin Nur someone, and had a very big exchange, bitter exchange with the president of Singapore. And after the 1971 Chogam in Singapore, up to today, Pakistan refused to endorse whatever came out of that meeting. And it was from that meeting that the president of Singapore was notified that actually when the president of Uganda leaves, he will be overthrown, because Britain had worked backwards against the push that the Africans were pushing against the people of South Africa. But Britain said, no, we only gave 4 helicopters to South Africa, and those helicopters are meant for external aggression. But of course that was not true. So I'm saying this to indicate sometimes the double standards that my colleagues had talked about within the Chogam, that there are certain things sometimes, and of course, unfortunately, when you look at the British Prime Minister, this guy who was called Edward Heath, I think someone, for him who was a complete extremist. And when it came to, and you know, for such, when it comes to issues of Africa, someone may not even care. No wonder they have to ship people from all over to bring them to Africa, because then that will be, in other words, one saying, if you have something to think about at all, don't think about coming here. Find your way somewhere else. But so, we, as Africans, we shouldn't also just be lamenting on why this, why that, why this. Even if it is just cosmetic, let's also do something. Let's come up to say, if you think that Chogam is no longer serving your interest, we say, we are getting out. And we form something else of our own. If that's what we want to bargain anyway, then someone will say, no, then we can have this, what do we want to have this, But at the same time, when you look at the establishment, you know, this Chogam has a number of good things that we as Africans, we need to tap in. Issues of education, issues of health, like now you mentioned, we have a number of interactions, the sports and within the Commonwealth, which are also very cardinal to our survival. But we don't have to wait until someone tells us, now, what is left there for you here? Let's also be on the forefront, since we are the majority in that. But at the same time, when you look at the aspirations for Africa, not only in Chogam actually, even when you look at the UN, what are the positions that we are pushing? And also that affects the number of people and the same people who attend some of these conferences. You look at them and you're like, is this what brought us here? Because at the end of it, there will be a dinner, there will be a fanfare, and everyone will fly out of those capitals and get back home. So I think it needs a lot of background planning. Before we go there, let's have this. Before we go there, let's have this. Even within the Chogam, let's have blocks. And that happens, those of the EAC now are having a position, the SADC having a position, and others like that. So maybe this will help us to consolidate our push, and what our push actually as Africa do we need, because we have been Africans have been talking about the Great Road from South Africa to Alexandria. Can we use CHOGM to achieve some of this? Can we use the UN to achieve this? But now when you are looking at that, then someone comes up with a small program or a small problem in their smaller countries, then we're set apart. So I think we need to look at our apexes that bring us together as Africans, and then we can use these apexes to drive our points. Otherwise, struggling as countries may not exactly do much. But under the Commonwealth, for me, I still believe that there are a lot of things that we can achieve in terms of trade, in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of international relations. There's a lot, definitely, that we can achieve. But we need people who are informed, who can lobby. And this is something which does not even happen in Africa. I think 2 days or 3 days later on, today, before today, we had the landmark ruling in the US of the abortion. And then they also, I think the other thing is the swearing in of this black woman who joins the bench. But there is a lot of lobbying before some of these things happen. Outside even government, there are lobbyists who lobby, like those who have been lobbying now, the Ghana issue. So why can't we also, Africans, learn how to lobby? That we lobby our leadership, that once, if this is going to happen, if we are going to have CHOGM, let's have ABCD issues addressed in this meeting. And this lobbying comes with a lot of benefits if it is positive, because there's also sometimes a negative lobbying. Members who are talking about the values within the Commonwealth, because it is very hard sometimes to come up with the standard values when it comes to people coming from different regions and different continents. But there could be also certain things that are really common to us as human beings, because people talk of human rights. Now, when you look at human rights from the African perspective, may not be the same human rights from some others angle, but we could have certain issues. Definitely, Rwanda doesn't have the best when it comes to the record of human rights. But I also believe that sometimes closing these countries outside because of their records can also be dangerous, because then you'll not be able to monitor what is happening there. But when you allow them to come on table, you'll be able to sometimes say, but here you are doing wrongly, and here you need to improve, because you are sitting with them at the table. But when you sanction them and you close them outside, then you are even allowing more abuses to happen. So I think allowing Rwanda to host the CHOGM of 2022 to me was a good idea. But then from there we can countries should continue to lobby, the CHOGM the Commonwealth should continue to lobby and to give advice, and also to engage with Rwanda on some of these issues that it is being accused of. Of course, even I'm sure even UK doesn't have the best record, so it is a matter of who is more cleaner or dirtier than the other.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Takali, talk about the future of the future against the other intercontinental groupings that we have. We've overemphasized the African Union. We've talked about all these. For example, when you look at the AU, our own continental outfit, where we converge, where we come, you talked about the Organization of African Unity now into the African Union here where we are. And it's an outfit that we look at to actually say we can use this vehicle to have a united Africa, to have a one Africa. There are challenges in there, quite a number of things, but we think. The other day, when Kano Muhammad Doumbouya overthrew Konde in Conakry, he said, what do I need? Where were you? Mulikuwa wapi when Doumbouya was doing this to us? Then the other day, of course, it also brings in issues with Sudan, the Khartoum government. And another time, I think after Doumbouya, I think it was in Mali. No, Mali, I think, came first before Doumbouya. There was that in Mali. And we're seeing this. When we launched the Africa Agenda 2063 in 2013, one of the cardinal issues, the flagship project there, was to silence the guns. It's amazing that in 7 years, from 2013 to 2020, we had about 39 coups attempted and, of course, successful coups. Now, when we think we should silence the guns by 2020, that's the time we actually saw again coups skyrocketing, getting back into the 80s, where we saw governments changing by the bar of the gun. What needs to be done, and what we learned from all these experiences? The other day, Uganda hosted CHOGM, whatever that means to us. Before Uganda hosting CHOGM in 2007, Idi Amin, as president of Uganda, hosted the OAU meeting in Kampala in 1975. So look at these. We've, apart from showcasing ourselves as conference destination hubs, that Uganda showed the rest of the world that we can actually host a meeting where the Queen can come. A few days ago, Kigali has exposed itself as another conference hub, as another destination where you can host a meeting with all these heads of states and nothing happens to them. They go, come, enjoy, eat, deliberate and go back. Apart from that, where does it leave us as, of course, as a continent and as Africans?
I think one of the greatest undoings for us as the African people has been our tendency to have no purpose, and therefore no plan, and therefore no strategy, and therefore we've reduced ourselves to people who are only existing. You see, when you don't have a powerful reason for being, you end up going in whatever direction provides the greatest pull at the time. And I think that is where we are as African peoples. You see these Anglo-Saxons in particular, and at the top of the heap are the British. We have the Americans, and we have the Australians, and we have the people of New Zealand. Those ones provide the core. There are some of them in South Africa and so on. But these people know exactly what they want and how they're going to go about preserving their helm, their place at the helm. That is really instructive concerning what we should be doing at this time. If we don't define our interests, someone will define them for us. Other people have been defining our direction in life. Other people have been defining what our aspiration should be for a very long time. Ndugu here talked about the fact that when we provide such an opportunity for others, we have ourselves to blame.
Sure.
We can't go on forever talking about the white man this, and lately the yellow man, and before that there was the brown man. First there was the brown man out of Arabia, then somewhere along the way there was a brown man out of India. Yes, lately there's a yellow man out of China. Somewhere along the mix there was a white man, Africa. We provide them every one of them comes and leaves a footprint, some of them uglier than others. But it's because we are open to such things. We have refused to define what we are about and to pay the price for where we need to go. Ndugu Mututo was talking about how the late Obote decided that he would be very vocal concerning what the British were really about. And they paid him in kind by using one of his own to dispossess him of power. They've been doing that ever since. So really and truly, many of our leaders who should be at the forefront of developing an agenda for Africa have lost the appetite. I remember President Museveni saying lately that the cattle rustlers would lose the appetite for cattle raiding.
For cattle raiding.
So the white man has made sure we lose the appetite for pursuing the ideology that we must have. The cost is extremely high. Think about what has just happened a few days ago here in Zaire, now DRC. These people had the audacity to preserve a tooth of Patrice Lumumba and to dissolve every other part of this person in a vessel filled with acid. All that was left of this man was a gold-crowned tooth. But they're so terrible that they took the dignity of the DRC by even keeping the tooth in Brussels all these years. Whatever DRC had to remember this man by, they kept it. Lately, their king, the king of Belgium, I think, he has been in Kinshasa lately, talking about his extending an olive branch. No, he wants to come back again to take more minerals. Yeah, no, he doesn't talk about that. In fact, he even fell short of saying he's sorry for what they visited upon the people of DRC. What we're trying to say is that unless we do two things, decide where we want to go and how we go there, and to fully internalize the cost of making that journey. Most of the African leaders we have at this time have cold feet. They know that if you go all out after the white man, you may lose your life, lose your power, or both. Most people are no longer willing to do that. Most people who are willing to do that passed through the independence era. The Patrice Lumumbas of this world, and the Kwame Nkrumahs of this world, and the Nassers of this world. At that time, people still had an appetite for the true cost of liberty. It's very high, you know. So, unless we internalize those two, weigh the true cost, and also develop a strategy by which we'll arrive at the destination, I'm afraid we'll remain where we are for a very long time. You see, Putin did not understand the appetite of the Anglo-Saxons to stay at the helm of world politics. Lately, a few days ago, Mr. Biden, who's at the top of their power heap, he said they will stay with Ukraine whatever it takes, for as long as it takes, at whatever cost. Those are people who know... I'm sorry?
We shall see that.
Oh, well. They may be defeated along the way, but at least they've expressed intent. Those are the two things that we are lacking, Babaji agenda.
Yeah.
And unless we resolve those two, we're still going around in circles, even when your great-grandchildren come. I'm afraid.
Ndugu Rugarama, you know, we're trying to look at the benefits that we possibly accrue from CHOGM. It comes with a lot of excitement. When we organized it in 2007 in Kampala, you remember the talk, CHOGM, and you see people looked at CHOGM as another game changer and said, because CHOGM is coming to Kampala, then we think it's actually going to revolutionize each and everything, and once we have CHOGM here, then we'll not remain the same. We anticipated that maybe CHOGM is coming with its own utopia to Uganda. Looking at, of course, Africa and the countries that have had an opportunity to host CHOGM and what it actually brings to us, there's an incident now, the Melilla in Spain, where we've seen many of these Africans get problems, and these are just happening now. Trying to evade the continent, trying to run, you know, because when you look at Morocco, the proximity to Spain, people would rather say we run and get into Spain. Spain is one of the world's biggest economies. It's somewhere one of the top 30, I think. It's in there. And people think, yes, when you possibly find your way to Spain, then you are in Europe. You run to Spain, you run to maybe Portugal, you go to France the other day, cross to Germany and find your way. They are running away from the continent. Now, we want to blame each and everything, and of course the West for all the things.
Exactly.
Uganda is celebrating 60 years in a couple of days. Tanzania did that last year, Kenya will do that next year.
Today.
Rwanda today, actually. Rwanda today, we forgot to talk about that. Rwanda is 60 today. Uganda will be 60 the other day. Tanzania was 60 last year. Kenya will be 60 next year. Except a country like, I think, Namibia or about. But well, now let's talk about South Sudan, which just came in 15 years maybe now or so. But the average age over the continent is 60. And we tend to still blame these things on the West. After 60 years, when we get back into the history of Pan-Africanism and our own nationalism, the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, the likes of all these South African nationalists and several others who envisaged this Africa, the United Africa, that today, 60 years later, we actually think the best place to live in is not in Africa. We are running away from Africa. We're running away from the spirits of our founding fathers and forefathers to actually say, we'd rather go and die in Melilla. We'd rather go and die in the Mediterranean. We'd rather die in the Pacific. We'd rather die in the Indian Ocean to at least find somewhere life elsewhere. We can't come to Uganda. You talk about the Rwandan issue, the Rwandan refugee issue. The other day somebody says, but if I go to UK and that's where I want to be, how does UK can bring me to Rwanda? You know, I'm looking for a better place to go, not just a place to live. I think, to me, living in the UK is better than living in Rwanda. Now, when I go to the UK, then again, UK says you need to go back to Rwanda. And somebody feels indicted that they actually condemned to stay on the continent of Africa. Where are we? How do we benefit from all these things, Ndogo Rugarama, as we also tend to conclude it?
You see, I want to appreciate this debate from this perspective, that it is very disturbing when one looks at what happens, especially to the black person, if there is such a word as black person, you know, white then black. It's a mixture of things. In Europe and America, to imagine that we can still have our very own running to such a countries, I want to, because the climate there, the attitude of those people who call themselves white towards us, it is all wrong. But what therefore should be the debate now is, what have our leaders done to change, to reshape that the people's attitude towards appreciating their very own, to know that I can stay in my country and I will make it. We seem not to, and across the board, I think majority of the African governments, we have not yet delivered the powerful punch in a message by actions to be able to retain our people here and make it here. We have not done that. To the extent that we have also not even been able, like Dr. Arkana has, when she was still the ambassador, African Union ambassador, diaspora, would say, to persuade the diaspora people to reinvest their income on the African continent, even when they are still there. I want to use the same opportunity to condemn in the strongest terms. And I hope there will be a time when we shall not just be merely condemning, but of course, like I said, it is a bigger picture that we must look at. What happened at the border between Morocco and Spain? You must have seen that. And there are all these Africans who have been rounded up. Some of them, I think some actually died. A good number of them were killed because they were trying to cross to Spain. So it was Spain and Morocco. So the Spaniards and the Moroccans, who, by the way, do not believe that they are Africans, because you go to Casablanca and you will find these ignorant people asking you how Africa is. It is that bad. I don't know whether they do it out of this quote-unquote superiority
In South Africa,
complex.
they used to do that too.
Oh, South Africa, you can imagine.
The blacks, moreover.
Now that is even, I don't know what to say.
At least those in Casablanca look different
At least
from
the
Africans,
Casablanca,
yeah.
they look different. But now to imagine, and Morocco has applied more than, I think, on 3 occasions.
My first time in South Africa, at the immigration, the immigration officer called me South African. But South Africans could actually say I'm not one of them, but the man said I was a South African. Then I had to insist I'm Ugandan.
The message of Marema it cannot have come in timely. That any other person away from the South African soil is as much a South African as ourselves. But you see, having condemned what happened at the border of Morocco and Spain, looking at how, of course, that has been happening also around the Mediterranean Sea, our boys being killed in those boats, trying to cross for a better life. And I think it is incumbent upon the African leaders and ourselves with specialized agencies like the Pan-African Movement and other bodies, but especially the government, to provide clear leadership on all fronts to make sure that we do not only retain the people, because we shouldn't be doing it at the barrel of a gun. It should be by establishing the conditions here on ground to make sure that nobody will be interested in crossing the Mediterranean or any other place to go and be humiliated the way our people are humiliated, like the recent example we saw at the border of Morocco and Spain. Now, I looked at, I wanted to be sure as to whether what I had in mind is actually the same as the theme of 2022 CHOGM in Kigali. And there was such a thing as delivering a common future, connecting, innovating, and transforming. Now, these are very powerful words. My question is, what is that? What is that common future?
What is that common? Yes,
that we are delivering? Are the English really honest when they say we are? I want to believe they are part and parcel of the team that developed this kind of thing. That delivering a common future. What common do we have? What is in common between, for instance, a Ugandan, for that matter, and an Englishman? What is common there? That we are going therefore to deliver a common future. Now, there is the element of innovation. How much has the English enabled their former colonies to do innovation? We are even not having technology transfer. Tell me which technology the English has transferred here in Uganda or in any of their so-called member states to do, for instance, because there was issues of health, malaria, and that kind of, which technology has been transferred for us to be able to, for instance, manufacture our own medicine. Which technology? So, at the end of the day, when we talk about innovation, really, we must be very careful. If the CHOGM was discussing having as part of the theme innovation, and we are having the head of Commonwealth as the Queen, and all that come under her, and then we are having this level of deception, that innovation, you can see that this is the first start I was talking about. It is going to be very difficult for us to talk about innovating a common future, transforming. What are we transforming? What can we reasonably say that since we became a Commonwealth member, we have, as a consequence, transformed from this to this, at this level of magnitude? So you see, I want to tell our people that, truth be told, what the English are interested in the Commonwealth is nothing but a firm, constant, firm grip of their former directly controlled countries. Now they do it indirectly, but you can see they may even be more firm in their direct control, although they seem to have gotten a competition from other interested vultures like China and America. But the truth of the matter is that they want as much as humanly possible. And I suspect, by the way, that they are now going to shift from 2 years, and it will be every year. And when they say we are going to be holding the CHOGM every year, we may celebrate. But what they are trying to do is that every after 2 years is a long time. We should, as much as possible, try to cover and keep patrolling. You know, when you intensify patrolling your territory, then you get to know it better. So in order to beat the competition, remain relevant, I want to believe that the British government is now going to change from the 2 years, and it will make it 1 year, and it will make it a point to make sure that they patrol more effectively their colonies, such that they also constantly devise ways and means, because by bringing a theme of this nature, talking about innovation, now we're going to persuade you that they are going to come up with certain innovations, certain formula for their for innovation that they're going to share with you, so that they can delay you from merging with other countries like China, India, probably, I don't know, and America, which may necessarily want also to come and introduce their own technology. So this, in a way, therefore, this is a way of clouding our imagination as a society and ability to think on our own. But like I said, let us not agonize. Okay. Let us use this opportunity to make sure that if there is CHOGM, and we have got the African agenda, we go through the structures of CHOGM to make sure that we drive the most effective punch through the structure to achieve our own Pan-African and African agenda.
Matuta, sum it up in the next 2.5 minutes.
And the best way is to do it together as an African continent, because as single, of course, I know countries like Kenya have taken from the exit of Britain from the European Union.
The Brexit.
Yes.
Even before I forget, I give you information on this, Matuta. Do you know Britain, which knows our arrangement as EACA, a bloc that negotiates together, they are negotiating with Kenya independently? What is the intention? They want for you the EACA spirit.
Exactly. And for me, I now don't blame them. I blame us.
We.
Of course. I mean, that
who allow the intrigue.
Exactly. Countries, states exist on interest. Now, for us Africans should have our interest, common interest. Talking of the Commonwealth, let also Africans have our own Commonwealth, and which is very okay in the African context, that something belongs to us. So let's, because when you look again of the CHOGM of 1971, for whatever reason, part of the issues that were discussed there were to do with the Britain access to the European Union, and what they wanted that way was that they wanted to be part of the European Economic, European Economic Community, European Atomic Community, and European Coal and Steel Community, because that is what, with the industrialization in Europe going on, that's what Britain wanted at that time. So now they realize that they no longer benefit much of that, and and of course the arrogance also when you are dealing with this case. But Africans, can't we also have something common for us? We say as Africans, and that's why for me I had said the African Union should be at the lead in some of the things. Okay. But the problem is the leadership of Africa, that either we are being led by stooges that who cannot look at what is common for us all, but they are looking at survival, or we are looking at the timid people who are scared in the event that they have a finger pointing at them, like she said, that one with the heart of a lion, but with the brain of a fox. so that
a sheep, actually. A sheep.
Yeah, you seem not to survive. That they just point a finger at you, and you're like, no. Let's negotiate.
I am sorry.
Exactly. We need men who can stand, and women, if it means the ground below them is shifting for the purpose of Africa. Now, if we don't do that, we shall continue this lamenting.
And they're still doing the same, because they're actually now finding ways of planting their leaders, those that they want.
Exactly.
They know that they have sheep's hearts.
Exactly.
And chicken brains.
That's what they do best.
We'll plant them, put them here, we just scare them, and of course they run away. But I want to thank you, gentlemen and lady. It is exactly 11 o'clock, and our time has actually run out. We need to stop this here for today. Thanking all of you. Thank you so much, Richard Akali. Thank you so much, Ndugu Garama. Thank you so much, Ndugu Mtuta. Our comrade Akol is not with us for some time now, but he will return very soon. And just letting you that Pan-African Friday, of course, will be here every Friday today, for as long as there is no anything that disrupts us. But things are continuing to happen to my comrades and compatriots in Rwanda. It is 1st July today, Rwanda and Burundi, to President Paul Kagame and to President Evariste Ndayishimiye.
I think one is a day after the other.
One is a day after the other?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So be allied or belated, whatever that means. But of course, to you just right there. And to also let you know that the Kenyan election is also gaining momentum, and we're counting days to that. So we think we need to find time again, look into Kenya to see now the odds and to try to make some predictions of who takes over from Muigai Kenyatta, whose term in office as president is actually ticking to the very last mile, to see who comes in to replace Raila Amolo Odinga or Ruto Samoei William. We will see, of course, the UDA and Azimio la Umoja, tutaona nani ni nani, and of course we'll let you know what happens. My name is Jagger Semakola Ziksoka for on behalf of the team here, and of course thanking our producer, Farouk Kurwama, and all the back room staff. Thank you very much for God and my country. A very blessed weekend. Shalom.